I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Wood, and I'm one of the pastors at Journey of Faith in Manhattan Beach. And it is incredibly cool to be here with Rocco and Beth on Your Wonderful Life.
So great to have you here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Really exciting. First time on the radio for me. Which
Really?
is, I know, right?
You're natural.
You haven't seen me yet, so... It's really cool to be here. Like I said, I'm from Journey of Faith in Manhattan Beach. We're about ready to start a new campus in Torrance, which is very exciting for us in the church. We have a desire to reach into different communities and bring people to a saving knowledge of Jesus. So it's really cool. So, but tonight, though, something that's been on my heart a lot is having a meaningful conversation with people. We live in a world that's so fast and so distant that we end up losing focus with each other and end up forgetting what is really important in our lives, which is connections. And so I started thinking about what it is like to have one meaningful conversation. And when I look back at my own life, everything that was meaningful in my life, every direction that I took, came about as a result of having one meaningful conversation with a friend. I wouldn't be sitting here tonight or being involved in a church or even walking with the Lord for that matter if I didn't have one person investing in me and talking to me in a meaningful way. And as I started thinking about that a little bit more, it made much more sense to me. I came across a study that was published in the Journal of Psychological Science. This guy named Matthias Meal, he put together a survey taking 79 college students, and he would put a mic on the lapel, and that mic would turn on for 30 seconds at a time every 12 minutes. And what he would do is he would try to record what kind of conversations that the people were having. And the study that he found, it was really interesting. The results showed that the people that had more meaningful conversations and less small talk were actually happier than those who just participated in small talk. It's really kind of interesting, the statistics that he did. In the people that had 45.9% of their conversations being about meaningful subjects, they classified themselves as happier, and the comments that they made were happier. Those who came across as being a little bit sad or lacking a lot of purpose, they only had 22% of the conversations being meaningful.
Wow.
So,
how interesting is that?
Right? Inside of that, it makes all the difference in the world because you never know when that one meaningful conversation that you have will actually end up changing somebody's life.
Right.
One meaningful conversation could be the one thing that takes a person from the edge of suicide and brings it back to reality. It is a one thing that takes a person on the fringe feeling like they don't belong, that they're not connected, they have no one that cares, to showing that they belong and that somebody does care.
That's right.
It is a one conversation that could change a person's direction and showing what they can do in this world, that they have gifts and talents that they didn't even discover yet and can be used in a big way.
That's
so these
awesome.
kinds of things are so important in our lives. And as I started thinking about that, I thought of Jesus. And every time that he would speak to somebody, it was very purposeful. And he would have a very specific thing to say to them. And one of my favorite stories in an encounter that Jesus had, he had an encounter with this lady who was from Samaria. Jesus was very purposeful in going to this place called Samaria in a small village called Sychar. And as he sat down to a well, it was hot in the middle of the day, a woman came up and just went about her business to draw water, and Jesus asked her for a drink. And she was totally blown away because in that culture at that time, Jewish males did not talk to a woman, first of all, and then second, they didn't talk to someone who was from Samaria. So Jesus is going across all of these boundaries, these barriers, and he's having a meaningful conversation with this lady. And it was an incredible thing. He says, hey, can I just have a drink of water? And she says, where's your bucket? You need a bucket to get some water. And he goes on to talk about how if you only knew the kind of water that I would give you, you would not be asking me this. So the conversation kind of shifts back and forth. They go from water to how we worship and where we worship. And you look at how Jesus purposely moved the conversation. It went from something small like a drink of water to by the end of it, he is dealing with her life, how her relationships have developed, how she's ended 5 different marriages, how she's living with the guy that she's not married to at the time. And she is blown away by this. I mean, wait, how do we get from drinking water to talking about my personal life? But Jesus moved the whole conversation into this realm. And it changed her life forever.
Sure.
I mean, what did she do after that? If you're familiar with the story, she ran back to the village and she told everyone in that village, you have got to come and hear this guy because he told me everything that I've ever done and I don't know him from Adam.
Right.
And they all come out and they listen to Jesus, and the entire village by the end of that passage is completely changed.
Isn't that awesome?
They are overwhelmed by Jesus, and this one conversation changed everything for them.
Yeah.
And when you look a little bit further at what Jesus is doing, he's giving us kind of a model of how to do it. It's hard for us when we begin a conversation with somebody to actually bring it deeper. But he shows us a little bit of how to do it. First, we have to be comfortable crossing barriers, whether we're just shy and we have a hard time talking with people. Like me, I'm very much an introvert and would love to stay to myself. But to cross a barrier, I have to go outside of myself to share what God has put in my heart or to talk with them about what they're going through. So you have to cross the barriers. Maybe it's somebody that you think is just a jerk and you need to talk with them and you don't know why. Right. Maybe they have so many difficult things going on at home, they have no other way of expressing it.
Right.
And then when you have that conversation, you cross the barrier of that uncomfortable person, it might change their entire life.
Right.
It might be a different cultural barrier that we have a hard time crossing. Whatever the barrier is, once you are able to cross that barrier, you're able to open up the conversation to something totally different than you were expecting. So that's the second thing that Jesus did. He began a conversation. So many times it's hard to actually start. So you got to think of something to say in a conversation. That's going to be my new line. Then I have to think, wait, how do I get it from, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you have to begin the conversation. So you start with something hey, what is your favorite college?
Right.
Oh, that's a great question. My favorite college. Well, did you go to that college? No. Why is that your favorite college?
Right.
And you start getting into a little bit more. Well, if I had it to do over again, maybe I would have gone to that college and I would have pursued this degree to do this with my life. And you start to get into deeper questions.
Wow,
than what you
true.
thought before.
Yeah.
So you cross the barriers, then you begin a conversation, then you look for opportunities to dive deeper. Give it a little bit more time, and you start asking different questions. Your what questions turn into why questions.
Right.
And it completely changes everything in your life. So in my life, the one conversation that I can look back to that changed this for me with people investing in my life, I was pursuing a degree in secondary education, physical education. My goal was to become an athletic trainer.
Wow.
So I love sports, and I wanted to work with athletes and be on the field. And, when athletes were falling over or they would damage their knee or get this massive cut, I mean, that was like Disneyland for me. I couldn't wait to jump out and tape up an ankle or, suture shut a big cut. I couldn't wait for that to happen. I did that while I was in college, and I was pursuing that. But along the way, one of the guys from the basketball team, he invited me to come to church with him. And when we went to church, after about 2 or 3 months, he says, "Hey, can you come and hang out with me and the students? And I think that would be really fun, and you could help me just run a game or two." And I said, "Okay, maybe." And I actually did it, and I did it the next week, and then I did it the next week. And then after that, we had this long conversation about, Joel, what does God want for your life? Where do you feel him leading you? What is your heart, calling out to you? And the more that we talked and the more that we shared together, I could see and sense God leading me further away from sports and athletic training and more into ministry type things.
Wow.
And as a result of that one conversation, I went back the next semester and I changed my major. I started working at that church continually through the rest of my college years. And then from that moment on, it was just, how can I be involved in helping students and people come to know Jesus, find Jesus with their lives, and watch him just transform them. One meaningful conversation can change everything in our lives.
And I love that question. What do you think God is, where do you think God is leading you? That's a great question to ask people when you're starting to get into the deeper levels of things, right? Because doesn't that make you question yourself? Like, what is God doing in my life?
Right.
And am I really listening to him, or am I just kind of going on my own course?
Most of the time we're just following our own course, or we're just going through the motions, and we don't stop to think about, is this where God wants me? And is it possible that I'm in this course and I feel like God has led me in this course for this time, but now I'm sensing in my heart that God is starting to lead me in a new direction.
Right.
And many times we are so used to being comfortable in our one direction. We think, no, God, don't take me away from this. I don't want anything new or change my routine. But then when we do that, we find something so much more exciting in our life than we thought. So I have some other stories I want to get to a little bit later with having a meaningful conversation in our lives. But when it comes down to these things, if you can purpose in your day-to-day lives to have one meaningful conversation, a lot of studies will say try to have one at least once every day. But if we could have more meaningful conversations, could that really be something that leads us to a greater sense of happiness, a greater sense of purpose, something that goes deeper in our connection?
I'm sure, right?
Absolutely.
All right, and when we come back, Joel is going to tell us some very interesting communication stories.
I love it.
Can't wait.
You're listening to Your Wonderful Life with Pastor Joel Wood.
You speak life. Oh, 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 oh. You speak life.
Ducks Radio AM 830, KLAA.
Are you thinking of buying or selling real estate? Look, you can go with your Uncle Harry, who sells maybe one house out of every 5 years. Who knows? Nice guy, sincere. He's got that cute little dribble down the chin going on thing when he eats. Or you can go with broker Bob Cadan and the folks at Prime Properties. Broker Bob has personally sold a gazillion, that's a real number, houses this year. He does it for fun, he's good at it, and he cares. He's an ex-Peace Corps volunteer, and the guy just wants to do the right thing. I know. He sold my last house, and he helped me buy my new Seal Beach condo. Are you convinced? Well, if not, ask me personally. Andy at PastorAndyQ.com. I'll give you the 411. That means information for you non-hipsters. Really, it's just you and me having a chat. Andy at PastorAndyQ.com. I'll tell you all about Broker Bob. He's the real deal. And with the money you save, you can take your Uncle Harry to lunch. He'll forgive you, especially if you pretend not to notice that. Well, okay, it's not so cute, that little dribble thing. Uncle Harry, you got to take care of that.
When it comes to your smile, you want the best, right? Dr. Stephen Tassoni and his crew voted Best Dental Office in the South Bay 6 years in a row. For an appointment, call 310-791-2041. That's 310-791-2041. Once again, that's 310-791-2041. To book online, newsmilesdentistry.com. That's newsmilesdentistry.com. Once again, newsmilesdentistry.com.
Ducks Radio AM 830, KLAA.
thoughts just fall apart. I do, I don't, I will, I won't. It's like I'm drowning in the deep.
All right.
It's crazy.
We are back with Your Wonderful Life. Pastor Joel Wood is filling in for our wonderful Pastor Andy Q, who's on sabbatical until January, I think. So thank you so much for I chased this guy down at church. I'm like, will you play? And then nothing, and then emailed him and finally got him. I was like, yes.
I tell you, nobody can say no to Rocco.
You're right.
He doesn't let go. He's like a pit bull.
Well, I had to get myself ready for being on the radio because I mean that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and with Andy, it's easy because Beth and I listen like we're listening to you. So, easy talker. But let me ask you 2 questions. Why did you pick Toby Mac for your bumper music? And
I love Toby Mac.
Well, answer that question. I mean, I can go back to my early days before I hit my rebellious swerve in my life. And I was a huge DC Talk fan. I mean, I could rap like the best white boys. I mean, it was it was like that. And but I picked that song only because what he was saying is actually what I want to say. When you have a meaningful conversation, you want to speak life into people.
Right.
In Proverbs, it says that in our words, the power of our words, we hold life and death. So inside of that, it's not life or death, it's life and death. So when we speak life into people, we're speaking death to things like our insecurities, the things that we fear the most, our failures. All of those things, we speak death to that. And when we gossip or when we speak evil of someone, then we're speaking death into who they are as a person and death into their being. And I don't want to be a part of that. I want to speak life into people.
Right.
So
well, I'll let you continue. Let me ask you one more question though. Where did you end up? Because you ended your story, but you didn't say where you ended up.
What school?
What school?
School-wise. So I graduated from Northland International University in Wisconsin, and I'm so thankful to be back in California after that. That was such a cold period of my life for many reasons. But when I was finishing my education there in my undergrad, my best friend and I, we were getting together and trying to think what's next in our life.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? I had a couple of offers that came in all the way from teaching English in Japan to running a Christian campground in Texas. Wow. And I'm trying to think, what in the world do I do? And my best friend and I, we started talking, and he just threw it out, hey, let's go to the Master's Seminary.
Yeah.
I said, okay. And
yes.
That was our big decision. We thought about it a lot more, and we had a lot more conversations, but...
And that, sir, is why I asked you to fill in for Andy. There you go.
Give props to J Mac.
That's right.
Yeah, that was an incredible time. I crammed 3 years of seminary into 4 years, and it was incredible, learning all about who God was and how to study.
You crammed 3 years into 4 years.
Yeah,
so.
You saw how I said that, right?
So I gotcha.
It's supposed to be a 3-year track, and I had a hard time squeezing that into 3.
You know what? It's because you came from Wisconsin and you were like, California!
Right? There's so many other things to do than sit in class.
That's right.
That is the absolute truth.
All right.
But I was also working with students at that time, so I was doing that as a full-time job and then trying to go to seminary as a full-time thing.
I know.
That was a lot, but
look at you now.
Right? Who knew?
You're on the radio.
Wow, how far I've come.
That's awesome. Wonderful.
Wow. Well, getting back to the one meaningful conversation, if I can give a couple of encouraging thoughts about how to do this, maybe you're out there and you're listening, how do I begin a conversation like this and how do I keep it going? The first thing that you need to do when you want to have a meaningful conversation is you need to be present. It's easy for us to be distracted or to think about the next thing that we're going to say. But if you're present, you're in the moment, and you actually are leaning into the conversation, then you will get so much more out of it, and the content will be so much more meaningful. Sure. The second thing is going to be you have to be willing to give and take. You have to contribute to the conversation as well as receive from it, and not expect, like, if I want to say something to this individual and they give me a blank stare, then it doesn't mean that it's not effective. It just
Right.
means that maybe they're processing it. But I want to contribute to the conversation without any kind of expectation on what's going to come next. But one of the best ways to do it and to get people engaged in a meaningful conversation is to get them to tell a story. We are all somewhat natural storytellers, and if you ask the right question, you're going to get people to just spill out all kinds
That's
of
right.
things from their life, because we have these things trapped inside and we want to tell a story. So you ask them questions to get them to tell that story, like, what did you do today? Or what was the best part of your weekend? Or what are you looking forward to the most? Or if you're speaking to somebody who's in a career, why did you choose the career that you're in? And it gets them to start telling the story like I did, stretching all the way back into my college years,
Right.
and then coming all the way to here. We love to tell stories. And if you can get people to tell a story, it will lead very quickly to a meaningful conversation. Here's a couple other things that you can do is be curious. Have a curious mindset. So when you're talking with somebody, look for something engaging. Look for some kind of little snippet in their story that is very different or out of the ordinary or something that is unique. And latch onto that and develop it a little bit more. Talk with them about it a little bit more. So be a curious person in the conversation. And then don't be afraid to share some details about yourself. That's very important
Of course, yeah.
inside of a conversation. If I could give one last thing, and that's dare to be honest with it.
Oh, yeah.
In a conversation that's meaningful, if you want it to dive a little bit deeper, you need to be honest with what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what's happened in your life, the stories that you are holding on to. Share things like, you know what, I'm not a big talker. I really don't like talking, but I love to listen. And that opens up another door of a conversation. Or, you could say things like, I really don't like camping, like at all. So it opens up a lot of questions
Sure.
and a lot of
Did you
conversation.
just get back from a camping trip? Is that why that came up?
No, I actually do love camping, but
Oh.
I am loving being inside, and
Yeah.
Right.
especially with all the sports and the World
Oh,
Series
yeah.
starting. So
So
I'm
excited.
very excited about that. So one of our other pastors, he says I'm an avid indoorsman. So
That's how I am,
I
too.
would feel very, very much like that. I do like going outside, but if you ask me to choose. All right, so getting back to what we...
Sorry,
what we-
I keep sidetracking you. I never get to talk to you. That's
I
why
know,
I'm
it's
like,
such a great sidetrack, though. The last thing you could probably say is something like, I'm really proud of this in my life. If you could share something like that, it gives people insight into what is important to you, and it helps to draw them in and keep the conversation going. And you might never think that you're making a difference in someone's life when you do these things. You might think as you're having a conversation, am I saying anything that matters? Am I talking to somebody in a way that is helping them? Is there anything good that's going to come out of this? And sometimes you have to leave the results with the Lord, but sometimes you'll get to experience the effect of a meaningful conversation in your life or in somebody else's life. I'll give you an example of a girl named Alyssa. And Alyssa, she was in high school and she had a relationship with the Lord. She went to church and the youth group, and she loved God with all of her heart. And she tried so hard to help her friends understand why she believed in God and how she came to believe in Him. And she had these 4 really close friends that she would talk to all the time, and they would get into some deep conversations about everything from heaven to abortion to the existence of evil in the world. And she talked to them all the time, trying to get them to understand what she believed. But all throughout high school, they really had no interest in following Jesus ever. And when they graduated from high school and went to college, they kind of drifted apart a little bit. And they would talk together over email or phone calls. And over the summer, they would do vacations. But it never had that same thing. And a couple times they would come back over summer and they would have some of the same kind of conversations. They would talk about deep topics. And it resulted in the same. So Alyssa got very discouraged, thinking that it never made a difference. Well, one summer she came back and she got connected with a friend, and that friend was pushing a baby stroller. There was no guy in the picture, and Alyssa started thinking to herself, a lot of good those conversations had in her life. But when she reached out to hold that baby from her friend, that her friend said, you know, Alyssa, I have you to thank for this baby. Because when I was thinking about this, when I got pregnant, I wasn't sure what to do, and I was thinking about having an abortion, and then I remembered all of our talks that we had throughout high school and college, and all of those talks made all the difference in my life, and it's because of you that I couldn't go through with it, and now I have this precious gift in my life.
Wow.
That's awesome.
One meaningful
That's great.
conversation can
Right.
change everything in a person's life.
Wow.
Incredible,
Well,
huh?
thank you for being here.
So
Can you
wonderful.
come back?
I would love to come
All right,
back.
we're gonna have you back. Let me ask you a question. Is there any way anyone can get a hold of you? Like, how does a listener, get a hold of you?
Oh, great question. We'd love to get in touch with you. You can reach us at journeyoffaith.com. You can email me at joel.wood@journeyoffaith.com. We'd love to connect with you and have a meaningful conversation.
All right, that was Your Wonderful Life with Pastor Andy Q with Joel Wood filling in. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming.
I see skies of blue and clouds of white. The bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.